enterprise technology, the difference between it and IT is one is opening and closing and solving tickets. The enterprise technology is all about solutions.
Welcome to Technovation. I'm your host, Peter Hyde. My guest today is Mike Blandina. Mike is the Chief Information Officer of Snowflake, a cloud-based data platform company that powers artificial intelligence, data engineering, applications, and analytics, and that earned $3.63 billion in fiscal 2025. Mike's been in his role for about 8 months, and in that time, he's rebranded his organization from IT to enterprise technology. He's helped shape the Snow on Snow Customer Zero program, and he's been a thought leader around topics such as data localization, governance, and control. I look forward to speaking with him about all the above and more through this conversation. Mike came to Snowflake from financial services most recently, having spent time as Chief Information Officer of Payments at JP Morgan Chase. Mike, welcome to Technovation. It's great to speak with you today.
Yeah, great to be here. Look forward to it.
Yeah, likewise. I do as well. Well, let's get into it with regard to the business you're now a part of, Snowflake. In your own words, if you would, Mike, especially with an organization that is so dynamic and fast growing, give us a state of play on the business you're in.
Well, Snowflake is really all about bringing data together and allowing our customers to bring disparate sets of data together and do a single unified view. I think, that achieves a whole bunch of things. One, it allows you to do great analytics on it, but eventually, and more importantly in the future, what we see is a great use case for AI. And there's not great AI without great data, right? And so you've got to have accurate data to get accurate responses. So the company is really all about bringing that data together for our customers. We do that through a series of products, but at the end of the day, it's an AI data cloud company, and we operate purely on the cloud, on all three clouds. It really allows our customers to both centrally manage cloud data sets, but also bring in from disparate sets already in the enterprise and bring those together to provide a single view of that data to share with the company, to share outside the company, to drive their analytics off of that, but also, and probably most importantly, to drive their AI going forward.
And talk a bit about your role as Chief Information Officer. What's within your role, set of responsibilities, if you would, Mike?
Well, I actually drive all of the internal capabilities for the company. And so I don't build the product itself, but I am customer zero for the product. So we are one of the largest customers of Snowflake. Inside of Snowflake. So we use Snowflake extensively within my team, but we lead basically all of the enterprise applications. My team is enterprise technology. And so from HR to legal to finance, and then all the internal applications that our internal employees need to do their day-to-day job. And so, and that includes some AI tools as well, right? So basically, we're the in-house software development arm of Snowflake, serving Snowflake itself.
I was going to ask you in a bit about this Snow on Snow program. Maybe this is a good chance to chat further about that. As you mentioned, one of the largest customers of Snowflake is Snowflake, and that you help guide the Customer Zero program. I'd love to talk a little bit about how your team leverages the product set that the company creates, and thus the extent to which you then influence that product set as the first user, among a sea of other CIOs and other organizations using the same.
So, I think it starts with the core cloud data capabilities, and we drive many, not all, but many of our internal applications, as Snowflake is sort of the core data asset behind those applications. And in many cases where we do use a third-party application, there is a level of integration of that application into Snowflake. So as an example, if we're to use an HR package, a SaaS package, we will do some work in the HR package, but all of the data from that is exported to Snowflake. And then basically, we build some capabilities on top of that, and most of the reporting and analytics come off of Snowflake, not off the original SaaS application. So that's a fairly simple example. Getting into a little more complex example, we recently built a go-to-market for our sales team agent built on top of Snowflake intelligence. And so what this is allowing us to do is to get rid of about 250 dashboards that our sales team uses today and replace that completely with an agent that is built on Snowflake intelligence. Therefore, it's built on Cortex and all of our Snowflake data, and will service our sales team with any question they have, from who's leading sales in this quarter in the financial services, all the way to comparing usage from customer A to customer B within healthcare, and getting answers on what's the best way to approach this client, given both the structured data and unstructured data we have about the client. What's the best way to create a sales pitch for this new customer, as an example. So a pretty extensive AI use case in the enterprise, built by my team with Snowflake and built on top of Snowflake, and but yet using Snowflake intelligence as its sort of center interface, replacing 250 dashboards. So there's a pretty extensive example there.
Does that provide you an ability to speak with peers of yours, CIOs of other organizations, with a different kind of lens, as not as a salesperson per se, but somebody who understands this and what they might be considering in it to a greater degree?
Yeah, it does. It does. I've been to a couple of recent tech events where I have demonstrated some of what we're doing to some other CIOs, you could see the light bulb go on, right? And which is, how do you deploy AI in the enterprise? And I've always said it's pretty easy to take OpenAI, ChatGPT as an example, and I feed it a picture of my grandkids and say, produce a coloring book page for me. Does that pretty well. But there's no wrong answer to that. It's all in my interpretation of whether I like the coloring book page or not. Deploying AI in the enterprise is all about accuracy. It's about speed. It's about the quality of data. And the answers you give have to be incredibly accurate. And there's no close is close enough, or, we're not doing general research here. When I ask for second quarter sales up to the minute within this region, I expect an exact answer and an exact number to be accurate, especially, if I'm the CFO and I'm going to share that with an analyst as an example, right? So seeing these examples from Snowflake really help our sales team and help some of our CIOs that are working with our product or looking at our product really understand the power of that, and some examples that they can use in their own enterprise.
I mentioned in the introduction, soon after you joined the organization in recent months, you rebranded what was referred to as the IT organization. And I wanted to ask you a bit about why you chose enterprise technology, first of all, and secondly, what the thought process and the necessity for a rebrand in the first place.
Well, I think enterprise technology, the difference between it and IT is one is closing and opening and closing and solving tickets. The enterprise technology is all about solutions. And in the world of AI, I can, in the old world, I can go, you can make a request of my team and I can go close the ticket. But what have I really done for you for the future? And if I can build a solution that answers your question today and closes that ticket, but in the case of this agent that I talked about for the sales team, it also answers all the questions that you're going to have in the future, thus preventing more tickets from being opened. And so it's really about a solutions mindset and coming back at the customer and saying, what are you actually trying to achieve? In this case, these are internal customers, whether it's finance or someone else. What are you trying to achieve, and how do I make that possible for you? So as an example, in finance, we have an agent we built called RevOps, Revenue Operations. And it allows the finance team to interact with the finance data in a natural language interaction through an agent, through Snowflake intelligence. And the next time they needed a specific query run, they can ask that agent to build the query and run it. They don't have to file a ticket and ask my team to do something custom. So that's a couple simple examples, but that's really why we changed the mindset. We had great engineering talent within the company in my team, and it was really about refocusing on building things for the future and not just closing off a ticket and responding to today's request.
Yeah, very interesting. I appreciate you sharing that philosophy. You put a lot of thought into, as I mentioned earlier, growing demand for data localization, governance, control.
Right.
I'd love to have you highlight your philosophy in these cases as to the practices that work best relative to them.
Well, one of the things that's interesting in the cloud world is the cloud technology is expanding and many governments are going the opposite direction. And so what you see as an example, I was just in Berlin last week for our World Data Tour and was up on stage with AWS because they've launched the sovereign cloud in Europe. And so you see countries and regions wanting to isolate their data, even though the cloud technology allows it to not be isolated. And the reason for doing that, obviously, is they want some control over privacy rights, being able to make promises to their citizens about governance of the data. And the more that data sprawls, sometimes the harder that gets. I think we solve it pretty well, but that's still the perception. And so, so you add on top of that this idea that it's pretty simple to put together a data warehouse and just pile a bunch of data into it. But if you're using it in the enterprise, who owns that data? Who has access rights to it? How do you govern that? What are the set of compliance rules around that? Who's the governing agencies and set of laws that are applying to that data? All of that is highly, highly relevant in the enterprise. And so you can ask an AI agent a question, but you actually might not have rights to the data for it to create the answer for you. Therefore, you don't have rights to the answer either, right? And understanding that up front is, I think critical in the enterprise and making AI successful in the enterprise and not allowing, that data sprawl to become somehow data getting out of control, getting outside the enterprise where it shouldn't.
Speaking of advances in artificial intelligence, you built a Gen AI tool called Raven. And I wonder if you could share a little bit about how it was created, as well as the value you're deriving from it.
Sure. Well, in our core architecture, we start with Cortex, and that is sort of our core AI capabilities within Snowflake. On top of that, we have built a tool called Snowflake Intelligence. My team didn't, but our core product team did. And then what we've done and begun doing is building agents on top of Snowflake Intelligence. And what that really does is it allows for all the capabilities of Snowflake Intelligence, all the capabilities of Cortex, which includes structured, unstructured data, automatically building SQL queries, not having to understand how to do that, just being a human being and asking questions and then having the engine do it. And again, Raven was this idea of let's get rid of all of these sales dashboards and let's replace this with an agent that has the rights and authorities, assuming the user of the product has the rights and authorities, to look across all of our sales and manage sort of a book of work for every sales agent, manage and allow them to answer any question they have about their book of work, their clients, what the trend of the company is, where the sales are happening. So it allows both the executives and the salespeople to get a ton of value from it. And they don't have to click 7 clicks deep in a dashboard to find the information they're looking for. They can just simply ask it a question and they'll get an answer. And that answer is current, it's relative, it's up to date, because that query, that question is going to create a real-time database query. Again, they don't have to understand how to create the SQL to do that. We'll do it for them. And then we show them all the steps we walk through to get them the answer. And so, we've launched this with 6,000 people within the company. We're just a few weeks away from shutting down the dashboards. And I still think there's a place for dashboards. And in fact, one of the answers that the Raven will give you is if there is a dashboard and it's clearly the data you're asking for is on that dashboard, it can point to that dashboard in the page and the line number where that answer is, right? Rather than trying to reinvent the answer. And so, so it's pretty exciting times. And, it's one of several use cases we're working on with agents internally, all again built on top of continuing the snow on snow story, built on top of Snowflake intelligence and Cortex.
As someone who has reason to think so much about advances in artificial intelligence and working for a company that's a foundational organization enabling its success, how have you begun to or continue to incorporate it into your own workflows? What's the primary value you, Mike, are getting out of generative AI and agentic AI, if you care to share as it continues?
No, it's an excellent question, right? And it is one we struggle with every day. And so we've actually built an agent that looks across my team and can tell you who's adopting what AI tools, because it matters. Whether it's Cursor as a coding tool, or ChatGPT or Gemini, which is sort of built in to our working suite. So as an example today, the behavior change for me is I don't read an email anymore. I start by reading the summary at the top that Gemini gives me, because what it does really well is it can take 10 nested deep emails and give me a paragraph summary at the top of what really got said in all of those emails, right? And then I can pick and choose whether there's something there for me to act on, and I can drill into the email itself or just read the summary. Simple example. I'll give you one more. I had said to my team I wanted to build a logo for our team, not for the company, but for the team. But I obviously wanted Snowflake as sort of the essence of that logo and some other things. And so, I was on a call and I said, well, let's get the marketing team and the comms team. And I said, wait a second, why are we doing this? And I went on Gemini, which is Google's tool. And I said, build me a team logo. Here's the name of my team. Here are the themes I want in the logo. And it generated 4 logos, and one of them was almost near perfect. And so I did that in 30 seconds. But what was interesting about it, Peter, is like you have to stop and change your behavior, right? You have to think, wait, why can't I use AI to do that, right? And so, our CEO was asking me a question about comparing 2 tools, and would I do a quick comparison for him? And I said, sure. And I created a spreadsheet, some columns. I started typing, and I thought, wait a second, let's just see what ChatGPT thinks of these 2 tools. And I said, please compare these 2 tools, build me a features matrix, show me strengths versus weaknesses, and give me a summary. And it did a terrific job with under a minute. And now I didn't use everything it gave me, but I probably used 60% of it. And that was a lot of typing I didn't have to do, and a lot of knowledge I didn't have to transfer my brain to the keyboard. It did it for me.
A past conversation you and I had, you offered some thoughts about the existential crisis that AI presents to a number of SaaS providers. And I wonder if you can kind of highlight your own perspectives on that and AI's potential evolution to get more squarely in this space, or perhaps more clearly put, allow a number of organizations to develop their own solutions that might be more squarely in this space. Talk about your perspectives there, if you would.
Yeah, well, I think many SaaS providers today in the enterprise space, whether it's in the HR or sort of the ERP environment, or the service environment, they've built fantastic tools, and they've had great runs and continue to have great runs, and terrific software. But it's purpose-built. It has a set of configurations, and it generally has a set of screens, navigation, a lot of things that are entailed in that application. In the case of ERP systems, these are massive. They take years just to implement. And you could be looking at several hundred screens that your internal customers interact with, in some cases up to 1,000. Well, it's a lot of knowledge and a lot of understanding and a lot of training. And at the end of the day, many of them, the user experience is, could be 10 years old when the software was first built. And so how people see and want to interact with data today might be different. And so these same companies are now realizing that they want to provide an AI layer, an interface to that, and allow for better self-service outside the traditional screen flow, if you will, right? And so can I interact with my HR system by saying, please allow me to ask the agent to apply for PTO on my behalf between these two dates. Done. I just type it in, and now the application's still going to do, the regulatory and compliance work around making sure I have the right amount of, vacation available and how we're going to book that financially. But the actual interaction for the user changes pretty dramatically, right? And so I think some of what's happening is these applications also, their lens on data is only as wide as their application. And so what's happening in the AI world is agent to agent communications. You have standards coming out on, for example, MCP. And what it's allowing for is this interchange of data, and it puts these SaaS applications in a tough spot, because they want to share, because they want their application to be more usable, more broadly spread across the enterprise. But at the same time, the power's in the data, and you don't want to lose control of the data, right? And so I think it's an interesting challenge for them. I know all of them are working on their AI strategies, but we feel great about our ability to bring disparate data from these applications together and put some AI capabilities on top of that as well.
I wanted to also mention, this is an unusual role for you in many ways. I mentioned your past CIO position at JP Chase. You've been a payment technologist multiple times over in your career, including at PayPal prior to that,
Yes.
7 years prior to that. What attracted you to this role so different from others you've had?
My past roles, data is king, especially in the payments business. It is. There's no, when you're moving money electronically, it's either right or it's not. And if it's wrong, it's really bad, right? And so I sort of have come from the world of data. I started my career in that place in the early days of relational database. And so this was a little bit of coming home for me on that, but also adding in cloud. So the combination of a cloud-based data engine and the evolution and the rapid ascent of AI, and bringing those three things together, are all things I did in the payments and fintech space. But now I'm sort of doing it horizontally versus vertically. And so it was pretty exciting for me. I was looking at it going, the problems don't change all that much. It's big data. It has to be right. And it's adding AI on top of that, some of which I was doing at JP but very specifically in, things like fraud and risk models as an example. And so doing that more broadly, just it seemed like a great place to round out my career. And I also think I pretty much done just about everything you could do in financial services. I had run the largest payments engineering team in the world at JP and so that was the other thing for me. It was just a different challenge. And yes, my background was all engineering. And so the other thing that's interesting to me is sort of focusing on inside of the company now was something I had not done a lot of. And so yeah, it was one more chance for a little bit of knowledge, career learning, and also just love the company, love the story, and I think our technology is just so powerful. And so I'm I wake up every morning and think, okay, what changed overnight? Because the AI space is literally changing daily and weekly right now, and so payments was changing pretty fast, but AI is changing at 100 times that pace, right? And so pretty exciting stuff to get involved with.
Indeed. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I wonder, we've talked about a number of some of the most important trends that you and your company are helping shape in many ways. What other trends excite you as you look to the future, Mike? What else is on your roadmap as you think about innovations to come that might impact an organization like yours or the clients that you serve?
Yeah. Well, I said a couple interesting things to my team in the last few weeks, and both of them were part joke but part true. One of them was I said, look, I have good news for you next year. You can hire as many people as you'd like, as long as they're all digital agents. Um, and so that was a fun way to get them to think about staffing, and does it always have to be a human that I put in that staff position? And the idea of having agents on your org chart was like, it's just kind of a deeper way to think about it. And so the other thing I said to them was, I said, look, we've got to advance this enough in the next 4 or 5 years so that I can retire and my replacement is a digital agent. We have a digital CIO, right? And whether those actually come true or not, it's just a way to challenge the team and how we're thinking about things. And so some of the trends I think there are. I think we're at the very beginning of governance and compliance. I think this idea of data moving as fast as it can, AI engines acting on that. I think we've done a really good job at understanding who's interacting with the data and what rights and privileges they have. But I'll give you one more brain teaser to think about. So someone asking a question might individually have access and rights to 3 different data sets that question needs to combine to give you the answer. But does the person asking the question have rights to the answer? So, you create an AI agent creates an answer off of that. What are the rights and privileges to the answer, right? And in the past world, that would be set via a group of companies getting together and forming a standard. But AI is moving so fast, can you have AI create the standard, right? And so one of the trends I would just challenge is, again, think AI first. Would we solve the problems of the past with the same tools going forward in the future? The answer is clearly no. But you got to think differently on how you approach that. And I don't take that lightly. I've been doing this a long time. It's hard to train an old dog, right? And so just to get my brain to go, wait a second, let me use Gemini. Why am I asking my marketing team to create a logo for me, right? So I think also like the idea of this human interaction and how I ask a question, the results I get, what I do with those results, and can the results of the question inevitably lead to a complex answer, and how much of that can be done with AI versus human interaction. So I think the last one I would give you is sort of this, where does AI start and stop? Where's human interaction come into play? And the flexibility around that, so that at the end of the day, humans have full control of the things that you're delivering. It's yet to be explored, and it's an area of danger for companies.
Yeah, interesting point. Very, very interesting point. I wanted to ask you before I let you go, Mike, anything you've recently read, watched, and or listened to that you'd recommend to others?
I did just watch the final grand finale of Downton Abbey. And my wife and I have been huge Downton Abbey fans. And so we just ordered up the last final movie came out a few weeks ago. So
how was it?
It was okay.
Live up to your expectations?
It was okay. It was. They had a lot of stories they had to wrap into one to close it all off. So it was okay. But listen to. I'll give you one that no one's gonna. Well, only hockey people will relate to this. So one of my favorite sports podcasts is a podcast called Spittin' Chiclets. Most people on hockey would understand exactly what that means. And your teeth are chiclets. And so when you get hit in the mouth, you spit your teeth out. And it's a terrific podcast on hockey. And so I listen to Spittin' Chiclets, several times a week. And then one more I give you. I've gotten on this show that I've been listening to almost daily. It's called Two Way with Mark Halperin. And there's a Republican on and a Democrat. And Mark Halperin, who's been around the media for a long time, sort of manages between these two, and they do sort of a daily rundown of politics. And it's called Two Way because it's a podcast that actually you can get on, and they have interaction with their listeners, and it's really taken off. It's a terrific show. If you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it.
Great suggestions. Thank you. Who's your hockey team, by the way? Who do you root for?
The Colorado Avalanche. Yeah.
Got it. Well, thank you for all those suggestions. And more importantly, of course, Mike, thank you for the broader conversation, highlighting the remarkable progress you and your team continue to make now only 8 months or so into your tenure with the organization. I look forward to remaining abreast of continued progress. But thank you so much for taking time with me today.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I appreciate being here. It was fun.